Welcome to today's webinar, What You Need to Know to Get Current and Stay Current on Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, brought to you by ArcherPoint. If you are using Microsoft Dynamics NAV, you know the time is coming when you'll need to make the decision to move to Business Central. Today, we're going to clear any confusion you might have about your options and give you the information you need to come up with an upgrade path that's right for your organization. Our presenter today is John Long, ArcherPoint's Director of Upgrades. John is a 35-year business and business software veteran who heads up the largest dedicated upgrade team in the Dynamics NAV and Business Central community. Since 2002, John has been dedicated to perfecting the art of upgrading and has upgraded over 300 customers. John's going to walk you through what you need to know about upgrading and how ArcherPoint can help, including your deployment options, what to expect in terms of disruption, what you need to know about your customizations, add-ons, and data, and how you can decide on the best upgrade path for your business. Let's get started. John, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you and welcome. Zan has already introduced me, so I don't have too much more to add to that other than I don't do upgrades alone. I have a team of 25 dedicated upgrade resources, and we do, that's all we do is upgrades. Our upgrade department does about 25 upgrades at a time. We've had 10 go lives just in the past 3 months, so about 40 or 50 upgrades a year, and that's continuing to increase all the time as Microsoft makes it easier and easier to upgrade. And just before I start, this slide is about 23 slides long, and I'm pretty sure we can hand this out to you if you ask for it. A lot of the slides are very informational and great take-home slides to digest. At ArcherPoint, our whole concept of upgrading has been kind of escalated to the essence of what upgrades really are, and that is to get a customer's database current and stay current. And in the past, it's always been getting current. It seems like no matter what you do, Microsoft has changed so much, and it had in the past made it so hard to upgrade that virtually the entire community was always behind in getting current, and nobody was ever staying current. But now more than ever, staying current is actually kind of the new paradigm shift in thinking. So staying current really is our ultimate goal of where we want to see our customers and really all the customers in the community get to. So let's get to it. The first thing I want to highlight is just a brief overview of what NAV and BC is and always has been from a high level perspective, and what the big parts behind the scenes are, because nobody ever really talks about it. You're either using the interface and seeing the minutia and doing business, or you're dealing with data. But I'm going to give you a high level view of the topography so when we talk about the rest of the upgrade process, you'll kind of get a foundational understanding of what's really going on. The main thing with NAV and BC is the operating system of NAV and BC, and we call that the platform. You've probably heard that term before. The platform is essentially the application that runs NAV and runs BC. So like in Microsoft Word, the Word application is the platform, and your documents are the data, and the fancy functionality that allows you to create your documents is more the code. So in every technology in Microsoft, it's roughly the same, but so you can think of the platform as the application of NAV and BC. So when we talk about platforms and we talk about upgrading platforms, you'll hear this term too, and that's called a technical platform. It's separate than upgrading code. It's really just EXEs, DLLs, and it includes functionality that supports external interface technologies like web services and things like that. The web client, the help system, The upgrade toolkit is always included in the platform update. Every single month when Microsoft comes out with a cumulative update or a major release, the upgrade toolkit is also included in that platform update. Also PowerShell, the platform introduces, or in the past few years have introduced new technologies to improve extending Microsoft space, and they call that technology extensions. There's frequently performance enhancements and development enhancements as well. So we call that the platform. Then we get into the code, which is also confusingly called the application, but that's your ERP application, the application that runs your business. Now that's mainly what people think of when they think of NAV and BC. But just to highlight that ERP application actually operates within the larger technology of the platform. And they are independent things, and they are independent factors in your upgrade. As a matter of fact, your code could actually be on a different version than the technical platform. I won't go into that too much, but it just highlights the dependency, the independencies of those two technologies. So we have the platform, the code that runs in the ERP or in the platform. We call that the application. And then the final third major piece of the topography of NAV BC, I think that's a typo. Like, ironically, that should be topography. But there's the tables exist as code within the ERP application, but the third element of an ERP system is the data. So the data is your tangible, physical, like more physical inventory, so to speak, of your business system. And that is unique because it exists in the tables themselves. So the data and the code are tightly coupled technologies that really cannot be independently looked at. When you update your ERP application, your data will be affected, and it's a major factor actually in a re-implementation or an upgrade. So those are your three major items that make up NAV and BC. So with that, I'm going to go into some changes that, or a major paradigm shift in Microsoft's technology that makes upgrades now completely different than in the past 35 years of NAV, and that is the code. What we're looking at here is the old code methodology represented by circles. Each circle is either Microsoft's code, which is the NAV base, or third-party add-ons code, which is represented by the blue circles. We call them add-ons. You might hear them called ISV vendors. And then the customs, which is the orange circle, which is customizations that a partner or a customer has done. And as we know, every customer has customization. So that orange circle always exists, and more than not, add-ons exist as well. I've seen customers that have 15 different add-ons before. And the overlap represents code that both circles have modified. And if you see where there's overlap on Microsoft's NAV base code, where the add-on has integrated their code into Microsoft's NAV base code, that's what that delta represents. You'll also see a interesting intersection where multiple outside vendors or customers have modified the base code. So that represents three separate deltas. And the reason that I'm highlighting in this way is that this is why the old way is complex and hard to estimate how much of that code how long that code's going to take to extract out of there. In some cases, our automated tools merge that code automatically, but in a large portion of cases, when you have deltas like that, the more deltas you have, the more likely it is that you'll have to have a human being making a decision with your code, and that introduces the more human interaction, moving code around, the more likely you're going to introduce risk and issues during a test phase in an upgrade. So it does have kind of a compound cascading effect of risk and really time to address those things before you go live with the new system. But Microsoft comes to the rescue and have this new modern environment that Business Central offers. We call it eventing and decoupling into extensions, but what it really means is Business Central, the platform itself, Microsoft has written into that platform a technology called eventing, and Business Central will publish events all over their code, virtually everywhere, that a add-on vendor or a customer or a partner can subscribe to, and that relationship between the published event and the subscription to it allows us to decouple your customizations and still execute the same functionality and the same intention of the original request for that functionality, and without touching Microsoft's base code. So when you upgrade, those decoupled subscriptions are respected by Microsoft. I don't know if respected is the right word, but they guarantee, and so far they've kept their guarantee in the past 3 years, they will not break that interface. They will not stop publishing that event. So you can be 99.9% sure that your customizations aren't going to break, meaning when you upgrade, you don't have to merge it, you won't have a human interaction refactoring the code will simply just work as it did before. And as you can imagine, that reduces your risk of introducing bugs or reducing your functionality down to something that you might have to change later. It does come with some caveats. The main caveat is that, and it's not even that big of a caveat, but Microsoft does obsolete functionality, and they change functionality all the time, every single month. But they give us a year notice when they obsolete stuff. So when we look at an upgrade, we will look at the obsolete code, and it will tell us exactly how many months before we have to intervene and make the change to accommodate those obsoletions. Again, these are primarily designed for take-home slides, so there's a lot to these slides, and it would be best if you kind of stare at them for a long time, but we only have about 45 minutes left, so I'm gonna just roughly describe what this slide, the main essence of the slide, and that is that the Microsoft's lifecycle policy has, number one, been super consistent over the past couple of years and into the future. We're not expecting this to change. In the past, it was kind of hit or miss. Every few years, they'd come out with a major release, and hot fixes would come out randomly. But in the past few years, they've been getting into a really even, predictable, bug-free cycle, and this illustrates that. So every year, a major release will come out. or I'm sorry, every 6 months, a major release will come out, and they're calling them Business Central 16, Business Central 17, Business Central 18, which just came out in April, and the next major release will come out on or around October 1st, 2021. And that will be BC 19, and then going into the future, they're going to continue on with that model. In between the 6 months, so on October 1st, BC 19 will come out. On November 1st, or right around there, BC 19.2 will come out, and that's considered a minor release. And the minor releases are constantly adding features that are requested by the community, fixing known bugs, increasing performance, and like I said in the previous slide, they can be improvements to the platform or the code. So it might be in the form of functionality, or it very well could be in the form of performance improvements. This is another slide kind of saying the same thing, except this gives you an overlay of the technology that is literally obsolete starting in BC 15. So you can see the green background, that's the modern Business Central platform and code going forward. There's no, as you can see, there's no Cal anymore, which is the coding environment that we've had since, well, for 35 years. And now we have AL development, which has been around for a few years, but it's finally hitting its stride, and it's pretty awesome for a developer, and really the customer benefits from it as well by having a more consistent and structured and reliant code release to production. So it's much more stable, finally. And then named users instead of concurrent users at the moment. And I think for the foreseeable future, Microsoft's given deals on that, so you can take advantage of that. So there's no cost there's no cost prohibition when it comes to users like there had been in the past. The RTC client, you can see, is no longer existing, so it's only the web client, and it's really awesome. It's a incredible experience performance-wise. They did struggle with it for a few years, so you may have heard rumors about it, but now it's pretty awesome. And from a perspective of ease of deployment, there's no comparison. The RTC client has to be installed. It's the desktop client. It has to be installed on everybody's machine, and if you have, even 30 users, it's not an easy task. It doesn't introduce risk, and with the web client, you simply give all your users a URL, they click it, and they're in business. So pretty awesome. And then, of course, fully evented and extensions are required in the AL development world from BC 15 and beyond. So then I just want to highlight the BC 13, BC 14 blue line represents kind of it's the intersection where Microsoft is allowing Cal and Al and the RTC client and the web client, and eventing can exist, but it doesn't have to be extensions, because you can do event. In fact, you do eventing in Cal and Al, so you can sit on BC 14 and still take advantage of the modern web client if you want, but you still have the RTC client to fall back on. So it's kind of a purgatory where you can have the best of both worlds if it makes sense for you business-wise. We are seeing some customers that are taking advantage of that BC 14 option, and as you can see, we're on BC 18 now, and right now if you're on BC 18, you can only activate a key in your license that goes back to BC 16. BC 15 right now is actually obsolete. And that's because Microsoft enforces their policy on their licenses called the N-1 policy. And the N-1 policy is the license is you're able to activate a key for a version that's one year or less old. So BC 16 was a year before BC 18, therefore you can activate a BC 16 key. Now, BC 14, if you want to take advantage of the mixed mode, the mixed cal, mixed al, and perhaps because you want to take advantage of maybe a slower implementation of the full-on web client in BC 18, Microsoft has this policy that they don't have a name for it, but I call it the N-2, because the N-2 it goes back 2 years. So BC 14 came out 2 years ago. Therefore, if you have a BC 18 client or license now, or if you purchase one, you can activate the BC 14 key. And that allows you to sit on BC 14 until October 2023. And the reason for that is because Microsoft realized that not everybody's ready to go to a web client. Not all technology is ready to go to a web client. ISVs are, they have complex integrations with scales, for instance, that they just don't have the modern technology to use a web client yet. Security problems also kind of get in the way. So it is something you'll talk about during the upgrade process to determine whether BC 14 is right for you. Right now, 8 out of 10 customers are going to BC 18, but there are 2 out of 10 that are taking advantage of that BC 14 window, and you have till October to decide. So I talked about getting current mainly so far. We're going to talk about a little more about that in later slides, but I just wanted to talk about the benefits of staying current first. So once you get current, staying current is easy on Business Central 18, and for the large part 14 as well, because if you're in SaaS, Microsoft pretty much does the upgrade for you, and it's transparent. You might even find that your users don't even know that there was an upgrade last night. It'll be just like your updates to your operating system and Microsoft Word and every other app that you have. It'll just be transparent. You get access to new features automatically. You don't need to, especially in our subscription plan, you don't need to do an ROI analysis and determine if it's worth the money. You just get it. You can leverage the performance improvements, and of course, security is perhaps one of the biggest reasons for staying current. This is a very wordy slide. I'm not going to read it, but it is another take-home slide, and it just talks about all the major activities that happen when you stay current. So I guess it's kind of a contrasting slide to what I said, where upgrades will be transparent and you won't even know that they're happening. But these are all the buts. There are many things that actually are happening behind the scenes, even though they're transparent. And if you're on a state, we have our upgrade subscription plan is called the Stay Current plan. And we have 2 that we've defined that are reasonably priced for small or large organizations. And we would do it. It includes us doing all these things for you. So if you're on-prem, Microsoft doesn't upgrade your system, so we do it for you. We make sure that you're current on all your major releases and minor releases, and if if it's disruptive to your business, we work all that out with you and we schedule everything with you so that it's not automatically updated. In fact, that's one of the reasons that some customers decide to stay on-prem, because they don't want to be upgraded every single month. In SaaS, it's a whole other thing. Microsoft upgrades you, and all these things are relevant even in a SaaS environment, because, like I said before, it's not likely that things will break, but when they do, we'll be there to fix them before you even notice the issues. And we also monitor the obsolescence code, and like I said, we have a year to schedule fixing or changing those code constraints and testing them before they go into your production. And that's really important on an on-prem environment, but on a SaaS, it's probably even more important, because when you go live on SaaS and Microsoft upgrades you, you might not know about the problem until after it's gone live. So we do a lot of proactive kind of forensic analysis of your system and proactively fix things before they go into your live system. So, and we create sandboxes and just basically manage anything that has to do with the upgrade, including go live planning. 4 columns, each representing a different, distinct deployment option. You have your SaaS, which is really the only cloud solution when you think of Business Central Cloud, even though you can have an Azure hosted cloud server or even a Azure SQL server in the cloud. Yes, it's cloud, but SaaS is true. It's the true cloud platform for Business Central, and that's the ultimate push that Microsoft is hoping that everybody will go to, and they're making it really compelling. It's deployed on a Microsoft platform. It's managed by Microsoft, and everything is subscription based, and there's no hardware, of course, involved. It's all priced by the user. And to some extent, it can be affected by the size of your database, but that's even being minimized more and more, and it's becoming much more affordable. And then you have the Azure hosted, which is becoming kind of a stepping stone to the cloud, where people are starting to slowly shed their equipment from their physical brick and mortar buildings and getting more used to even partially moving or fully moving their platform and client access and their SQL servers to Azure. Seeing more and more in that, and that really just moving your system without even upgrading it is a kind of an upgrade in itself. And then your third-party hosted, that's basically it's a virtual environment in the cloud that mimics your locally hosted, what your previously locally hosted perpetual hardware. So, and then of course we have your perpetual locally hosted hardware that a lot of customers still have. They're all equally good. It really is, the choice is dependent on your business needs. You can, in fact, most of our upgrades are to on-site perpetually hosted servers with a dedicated network staff. Just a quick tidbit on manual versus automated testing. Virtually all customers are manually testing, and that's one big factor in upgrade. Our upgrade test phases are typically between 2.5 to 7 months long, and that's a lot of time. Of course, you're not testing 24 hours a day, but just the time itself adds to the cost, adds to the risk, and and it adds to the fact that you're starting on one version and you may be going live on a version that's 6 months old if you spend a lot of time in testing. And manual testing is hard, and it is human interacting, and it's time consuming. So with automated testing, Microsoft gives us a construct to create testing that doesn't affect the data. It rolls back any test that you do, rolls back all the transactions, so you can run the same test 100 times in a minute if you want to. So we frequently write a test, say for creating a sales order, for instance, with various items. We can set up the tests and run it anytime there's a change to the system, and it doesn't take any effort at all. It does take effort to write the code. So that dotted line there in the initial investment, it's a pretty steep investment at first, because we're writing tests for code that perhaps has been modified for a decade, and nobody ever wrote a test against that. So we do have a methodology for getting the best ROI at first. We only write, if a customer agrees to do automated testing, we only do automated testing to code that changes. So that seems to be the best way to get your return right off the bat. Nevertheless, over time, that dotted line where it intersects with the manual testing, which would be the alternate path or the default path, usually currently, you'll see that eventually the automated testing you'll see an ROI, and then it'll just it'll continue to give you benefit further out into the future. And as we get into this model of AL and decoupled code from Microsoft, those automated testings will kind of be the icing on the cake to give you 100% confident when you go live that there won't be any issues, or when we deliver the test database to you, you're likely not to find any issues. You'll probably get tired of testing because you won't find anything. Another wordy slide that's great for take home, and it really does answer all your questions for helping you decide what to do as far as BC14. And like I said before, it is the upgrade to BC14. Even if you're coming from 2000, anything with the RTC client, your experience in BC14 is going to be really similar. Your upgrade's going to be similar. It's going to be will be cheaper, but you still have to. I call it base camp. It's kind of where you get acclimated to Business Central. Your developers can get acclimated. They don't need to know AL, but AL's there to learn it as they go. So you can incrementally learn. You can incrementally decouple your code. You can incrementally train your users to get used to the new web client if you want. So it is a really good place to be. The 9 to 12 months to upgrade to BC14, we're internally making a huge push to decrease that time by 25%, and we're frequently seeing upgrades that last less than 6 months, and rarely are they 12 months. And usually when they are, they're a really big upgrade, maybe 2 terabyte database with thousands of customizations and dozens of add-ons. So I guess take that with a grain of salt, but we are constantly improving our timeline to decrease that. In a BC17, BC18 upgrade, anything above where Cal is not included and the web client is the only client, there is an extended time frame, simply because we do have to convert all your code from Cal to AL. So behind the scenes, there's a little bit extra time, but also during the test phase, there is a training factor that I think will add a little bit of time to get used to the web client, and also address functionality that's not compatible with a web client, like a scale interface, or even customers are used to making links to local files, and that's completely new technology in the web environment because of security. So here's all the factors that you can read through at your leisure to help you make your decisions. And here's another kind of bullet pointed slide that will help you decide when you don't actually know if like I said before, if you want to go to BC14, or if you're not even sure, you can always change your mind, but you can get a BC18 license now until October and activate that 14 key when pretty much whenever you like. So you can decide after you purchase that if you're not sure, but you know you're going to upgrade in 2022. So let's see. Let me see if I can articulate this. If the client upgrades after 3/31/22, client should not pull BC license and stay on current license till decision to upgrade. What that means is, like, if you're on let's say you're on 2016 and you want to upgrade, but you're going to upgrade after 3/31/22, you won't have a choice to upgrade to BC14 at that point. So you'll upgrade to the latest version of Business Central, which will quickly be shortly after 3/31, BC19. And you don't want to get your license until you start the upgrade, because when you buy the license, it will freeze your current license. So may or may not be a big deal, but some customers are in the middle of a big project and they need to buy new objects, or they're perhaps hiring a bunch of new users and they have to add new users. You won't be able to add new users or buy new objects or activate new modules if you buy your license for Business Central. So that's what that's all about. Just a quick kind of overview of your other options to get current, which is re-implementation. And so I just wanted to go over the difference between the two, because it just talking about the re-implementation helps you understand what an upgrade is. Now, in upgrades, your data in production stays in the database. So what that means is when we at go live, or even when we deliver a test database, we take a copy of your production environment and we run the Microsoft's built-in upgrade tools that we also modify for your custom data, but it runs within that database. We don't take data out and put it back in. It all stays in that database. In a re-implementation, your data is we take a copy of your production database and extract it into a new database, the new version of the database. So there's a lot of massaging going on with the data. A lot of times you'll use data ports. Sometimes you'll use SQL injections. In some cases, you have to create journals and repost the data. The second attribute that has a difference is in upgrades, all your data is in the upgraded version. And that's 99.9% of the time. There are times when customers ask us to remove data, but it's really unlikely because there's no reason, there's no technical reason to modify your data, because it literally stays in the data. So, what's the point? In a re-implementation, some of your data is in the upgraded version, like your master item data, for instance, or your employee information. But frequently in a re-implementation, the re-implementation is done for business reasons, and there are reasons to perhaps redo your chart of accounts. For instance, you're going into a new line of work, or you acquired a new business that requires different dimensions. So that's why I say some of your data is in the upgraded version. And then lastly, all summer, none of your customizations are in the new application. That's actually true for both a reimplementation and an upgrade. And finally, both of them get you to the same exact place. Your ERP application is on the newer version of Business Central. And here is more of a kind of a take-home slide. Also, it'll give you you can drill down into the factors and the reasons perhaps why you would want to pick one upgrade or another. So you'll be able to triage your decision to get current, whether it be an upgrade or a reimplementation. Just a couple things to note. If you have major changes to your business and your business processes, usually a reimplementation is what you're going to be looking at. If your database is really big and you have a bunch of customizations that you don't think you want, it rarely is a reason to discuss a reimplementation, because there's hardly any benefits to rewriting all your customizations in a reimplementation. There's no reason why you can't modify or change all your customizations in an upgrade, but it's never done, and we try to get away from customers doing that simply because the upgrade itself is already disruptive. And frankly, you can clean up your customizations at any point in time, including in your current system, whether you're on 2009 or Business Central 14. It doesn't really matter. But during the project itself, it really does add time. It adds to the length of the project, cost of the project, and the risk to the project. That being said, in a reimplementation, it's always done. You're always doing extensive changes, and that's just the nature of reimplementations. Migrating data in reimplementations, like I said before, you're moving all your data, so that does cause the timeline to expand. Let's see, one other thing on the time frames, the quote for an upgrade is we pretty much have it automated, and we can do a super quick analysis of your database with hardly even looking at the database itself. I think we ask for a questionnaire to be filled out in a spreadsheet that includes all your customized objects, and we can turn around a quote for free within 24 hours usually, but it can be 48 hours depending on what we find. We might find an ISV that we don't know anything about, and we'll have to do some research, but it's still free. In a reimplementation, it's impossible to give a free quote. They do take time. You have to analyze, because the reimplementation usually requires a business change. There's more functionally minded consultants that get involved that have to talk to more functionally minded customer roles, like the controller of the company, for instance, might be involved in the upgrade just to get the quote, to determine what kinds of business changes and what the ramifications of those changes will be to, say, your dimensions or your charting accounts, and what opening balances do you need, what ledgers do you need any historical records, all those kinds of things take more functionally minded folks, whereas in the upgrade it's largely a technical task, and all the tasks are automated. And that does cost. The business engagement for a reimplementation is a time and material, where a upgrade quote is always free. The time frame, 3 to 9 months. I know on another page it was a little bit different, but that's what we're seeing right now. On the low end, 3 to 9, and it has gone up as high as 12 in the past year. We've seen a couple that were 12, but the average is 7.2, and we're trying to get that down to 5.7. That's our goal on the legacy upgrades. And in reimplementation, it's rare that you'll see one be less than 6 months, but frequently we'll see them close to 18 months. And I've personally seen them go 3 years. I've never seen an upgrade go more than 12 months. So just to give you a frame of reference, that's what to expect. I wouldn't say that that's part of your decision making, but it is an expectation that you should have. Typically, the cost is lower on an upgrade, but we have seen reimplementations, or we have seen upgrades that are cost prohibitive to the customer for whatever reason, and they go with the reimplementation. And I don't have a lot of data whether it actually ends up being cheaper or not, but I have heard that they sometimes can be. So that's not necessarily a decision maker, it's more of an expectation. All right, I think I got that one. I think this is my last slide. And this is called Find Your Pathway, but really your pathway is, you really only have 2 options, or there's only 2 recommended options, and that is right now to be BC 14 or the latest version of Business Central. The reason that you're seeing these bubbles and the implied path is because those are the paths that we take behind the scenes to get you to Business Central. So if you're on NAV 2.6, as that bubble explains on the left, Microsoft has an upgrade path to NAV 4. So behind the scenes, we would upgrade you to NAV 4, then we'd upgrade you to 2009, then 2015, then to Business Central 14, which is the stopping point to all subsequent versions of Business Central. So Microsoft, what each of those 1, 2, 3, 4 paths represent are upgrade toolkits that Microsoft give us. We depending on the version you're on, we do customize it so that it literally is just a script that runs that takes your database through all those paths at go live, and we test that extensively so that at go live, I wouldn't say we just push a button, but there's a tested script that ensures that the go live doesn't have any hiccups through all these different versions. So you can see as you're depending on the version that you're on, the older you're on, the more steps there are, the larger amount of risk, and the timeline of your upgrade will go up, and the cost of it unfortunately goes up as well. And we are trying to address even automating further all those legacy steps, because they're not changing. Microsoft's not changing those paths. They just exist, and we have scripts that we're constantly improving the automation on. So another thing I like to say about this slide is, it doesn't matter how old your system is on, we can get you current, whether it's re-implementation or an upgrade. Just this past year, we did a re-implementation / upgrade for a customer that was on NAV 1.0, believe it or not, and they went all the way to SaaS. So anything's possible. And I'll just end with, we've upgraded hundreds of upgrades over the past few years, and we've seen the most complex upgrades as far as the number of ISVs, the number of customizations, the size of the database. We upgraded a 3.7 terabyte database, and the go live script ran easily within a 2-day weekend. So there was no disruption to the business. We didn't have to close down for longer than 2 days, and we never have had to. And we frequently upgrade 1 terabyte databases all the time. Usually though, they're between 50 gigabytes and 700 gigabytes. And with that, we will go to question and answer. if we have time. I think we do.
A few minutes. Thanks, John. We did have one question that came in asking if all 4 development options are permanently available or only SaaS. And I did respond and state that currently all 4 deployments are still available and will continue to be so. We don't have any news that they're going to take away the 4 deployment options. Correct?
Yeah, Microsoft has said that they're going to keep on-prem available for the foreseeable future. I'm guessing that that's going to mean 10 years. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say pretty much for a long time. We won't have to worry about that. And once they announce it, they'll likely give us a few years notice.
At least.
Yeah.
Right, and then just a quick reminder that Business Central 14, right, the option where you have Cal and Al, web clients, and our role tailored client is only available until October 21, 2021, so this year. So now's a great time to decide if this is the right path for your organization before it's no longer an option. Another question that came in SaaS 80 gigabyte database option. Yes, you can. Robin's asking if we can request more space, and yes, you can request more space on the support on the SaaS version. And I can't remember the pricing, but I'll see if I can get you a link to that in our follow-up email. As far as, but yes, you can increase your database size, even though it comes with 80 gig, right, John, in the SaaS version?
Yep. Yes. And
there's always been the ability to add that, but they've actually reduced the pricing on it of recently this year. So
yeah, so it's a lot easier to upgrade your drive space as necessary.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of interesting things that we're finding when we're upgrading a database to SaaS. It's shrinking by 33%. And we asked Microsoft about that. They have technology for, I don't know if I'd call it compression, but they have some of the system data, and I guess perhaps it's because it's shared amongst multiple customers, is stored in what they call system tables outside of your database, and you're not charged for that. So we're seeing some pretty interesting things there. So the database size is being less and less of a factor all the time.
All right. That's all the questions we have for today. I want to thank everybody for your time. I hope you found this time well spent. Please feel free to email us with any feedback or questions and topics that you'd like to hear more about. Send your comments to info@archerpoint.com. Again, thank you for your time. And this concludes today's session. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this ArcherPoint video. If you found it helpful, make sure to check out our website and blog at www.archerpoint.com. Additionally, if you have any questions regarding our products, services, or information in this video, feel free to email us at info@archerpoint.com. Thanks.